and welcome to the Pilates Bridge Live Show. Today we're talking about working with postnatal clients, and I have a wonderful guest with me today, Keren
Feingold?
Feingold.
Yes,
Feingold, yes,
you
that's
said it
it.
right.
From Mama Like Me. So before we get into it, so Karen and I started working together. So she's actually a master trainer for Real Pilates, right?
Yes.
And one of the lead trainers. And she also has her pre and postnatal teacher training program at Mama Like Me. So we connected and started working together. And both Karen and I kind of like share the passion for working with postnatal women because it's like it's one of those topics that I feel like is not discussed enough. So Karen, can you share a little bit what exactly got you interested in this topic? Why did you decide, okay, I just love working with pre-postnatal, and this is what I want to dedicate my life, my career to.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for having me. So for me, I think I realized I'm really, really interested in postnatal. It was after I had my first child, and I came from like a background of a dance, and I was a dance practitioner. So I used to do a lot of things. And then when I got pregnant, I took some workshop on prenatal, so I felt more or less prepared. But when I had my son and then I started going through the process and trying to like get back, I realized that I was like, wow, I was not prepared ahead of time to actually get back into Pilates or just to life, to be honest. And that's kind of like when I was like, I really, really want to be able to understand this more for myself, but also for like other clients that I've been working with and kind of like realizing that there needs to be more guidance in this like postpartum journey and feel like there are more people like me. That's what I call it, mama like me, that wants to get stronger and not to like, I always say it's like that saying like getting back to things. It's so lame because we're never going to get back to where we were. We're different. We're better people. We're moms now. And it's just, we need to accept that. And also to accept that like what we had before is going to be very different what we are coming forward, but it doesn't mean it shouldn't be like amazing. And that was kind of like my biggest thing is like, let's try to teach clients. And then for me, later on, it comes to teachers because I was like, I can reach for as many moms as I possibly can. So why not to spread this and kind of like build like a big village of people that like are just interested to know more about postpartum.
Yeah, I know like when I started teaching, I've been in fitness since I was like probably 15, like 15, 16 started teaching and I got pregnant and all of that. And like pregnancy, all of that was felt easy, I felt pretty confident, I have all the information I read up about it, but at that point, like when that postpartum period started, it hit me like a truck because
Yeah.
it was like a big not just physiological, right, like physical change in the body, but the emotional. Like I felt like
Oh yeah.
I was not prepared for what was coming, not just taking not the baby stuff. I mean, we'll
Yeah.
understand sleepless nights and all of that. You kind of, but I was as a new mom, like none of my friends had kids at that point. So I was the first one of them. Like I was not around a lot of pregnant women or
Mm,
anything. So it was like, oh my word, what is going on with my body?
right.
I can't do anything. It's like an alien body. And I think again, being a fitness instructor at that point, I was not a Pilates instructor yet. I felt like I was not prepared as a person. And yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of women are like that as well, right? Like if it's their first pregnancy and they're used to doing all their stuff and they're,
Right. Yeah.
active and all of that, and then this baby comes and it's like, what do I
Yeah,
do?
you kind of realize like how weak you became after pregnancy. Even though like let's say you worked out through pregnancy and
Hmm.
then after, it's like it was like such a shock. I think I remember trying to do a roll up after I got back and I didn't realize why can't I do this like really simple exercise that I always was so able to do. And then after research realizing that like yeah, that makes a lot of sense that any articulation exercise are going to be very challenging after
Hmm.
having a child. So yeah, I think I became very humble I think I took for granted how strong I was in the past, coming from different, like, I used to do so much. So all of a sudden becoming pregnant and postpartum, all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I appreciate Pilates so much more. I actually understand how much help it can give other people, especially moms.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, so let's dive into it. So,
Yeah.
I'm gonna let everyone know, whoever is with us live today, if you have questions, make sure to drop them in the chat so we can get to them first. We also have a lot of questions that were submitted, so we'll just kind of keep sprinkling them as we're talking about all these pre-postnatal topics. But yeah, we're super excited to answer your questions here. So first, question that I have for you, and I think like it's a common misconception a lot of people have is that and I've heard that personally from working with the other teachers, is like, oh, like they're scared of working with prenatal clients because they're afraid to break them. Like they
Yes.
feel they're so fragile. And how, in your experience as an educator, as a teacher, how should we approach working with these prenatal clients?
Right. So I agree. I think there was like this idea that like moms to be are so you need to kind of like be very careful not to do anything so you won't harm the mom and the baby. And there is so much fear around it. And I think in different trainings and workshops, it was always talk about the negativity about it. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. Lots of don't. And I think for me, it was very alarming and makes myself scared. And then I realized that I think we need to talk about more the positive. What can we do and how do we do it? So when you do have a new mom coming in, it really depends what kind of trimester she's in, right? And according to that, we want to adapt. Like also, we always want to take in history. I always kind of check to see what is the mom doing because nowadays, and we know moms do so much more. Like some are cycling, some are running, some are doing like, I don't know, like swimming, competitive sports. And if they do all that, then when they come to Pilates, we don't need to be like so super, super gentle. But then again, you have the other spectrum that is like moms that never did anything and then they are on the couch and then they're coming for the first time because they got pregnant and they need to move. Then definitely a different approach. So I think kind of like knowing who's the person in front of you is can be very helpful to know what kind of like workout you're going to give to that specific person.
Yeah. So do you know, are there any specific, I guess I would say like misconceptions or maybe not like blanket statements that you hear a lot of in when working with prenatal clients that you think like, oh no, this is
Yeah,
just too wide, too broad of a
I
net.
there is, I think one of the things that people are most scared of is like lying on the back flat. I think that's a big one. And I think it's important to like to be aware that like some like research in the past said that like after 20 weeks, they shouldn't lay down flat on their back. And I understand that because it is like when your belly is now bigger, it's going to be much harder for some to lay down and breathe naturally and then with the blood flow, but then we have to remember that in Pilates, we're not staying on our back for a long period of time. And I think if we realize, and then later on, research said, like, just don't stay on their back for too long. It doesn't specify how long of a time, but in Pilates, I always think like, just do a short series on the back and move on. Some clients will need that wedge. They will need
Mhm.
that angle. And some of them, like, they just like the moment they lay on their back, they're like not feeling great doing it. So I will like offer them to elevate, but don't assume that everyone needs it. Sometimes it's actually uncomfortable because it puts pressure down. So it's important to kind of like see who is that client and not just assume that everyone needs the wedge the moment they get to like they have the belly. Also, first time mom, by 20 weeks, she barely shows. It's like it's usually the second, third mom that like starts showing around like 10 weeks, but like it's usually the first time mom that like she's like, oh my God, I'm so big. And it's like this tiny little like bump. And then like it's really not that big yet. So
Yeah.
so I think that's like the big one that I always hear about, like, oh my God, but she can't lay on her back. I'm like, yes, she can, but dot dot dot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like a lot of times moms start feeling uncomfortable like at that point, that's really a better indication of what
Yes.
it is, rather than the instructors just trying to like, oh, this is like this week, so here comes the wedge or whatever it is, right?
Right. Yes. I think it's also all the added like toys sometimes, right? We want to like kind of like, and then like all of a sudden you grab a pillow, you grab a ball, you grab a thing, and you grab. And I'm always about like, if you need it, it's great. I'm not saying you shouldn't have all those things, but always kind of like go back and ask yourself, what is this for? Is this serve my clients to do this exercise better? If that's the answer, then yes, grab it, do it. But sometimes it's kind of nice for a woman, especially when she's pregnant, to feel her own body because she's not going to have any props when she's going through labor. Like the only problem it might be is like holding your like partner, or like if you have a doula or you have like this big ball, but like in the end of the day, you're doing it all on your own. So I don't know, something good to prepare and remember that.
Yeah, yeah. Get familiar with your own body, right?
Yes, I think that's important.
So, I'm gonna ask one of the questions that
Hmm.
came in from one of the subscribers. She asked, like, is anything actually has to change during the first trimester? Are there any modifications that need to be made?
Right. So I think that's a great question. So technically, no, you don't need to change anything. But because in the first trimester, you're going to have different people feeling different things, right? You might have someone with like nausea, someone that is like, every time she lowers her head down, she gets dizzy, like more kind of like a vertigo kind of feeling. So you just want to be aware of like how your client is feeling on that specific day of a workout, because that can change throughout that 12 weeks of the first trimester. So it's always good to kind of check in. I always ask my client, anything new and exciting to share? So I kind of know how she's feeling today. And then according to that, if I need to modify it, I will. So if she's feeling like, oh my God, I'm so dizzy, I might rethink that elephant. I might rethink things that puts her in a position that like compromise her balance. So just those kind of things. But other than that, there is nothing specific that I say like don't do. That's pretty much it.
Got it. And then while we're on the topic of prenatal, another one came from Tia, and her question is like, I was taught to avoid inner thighs after 12 weeks, but newest instructor who did her teacher training was taught this is safe. Do you have any comments on this?
You're right. So I think when you're talking about inner thighs, if you overdo it, and that's actually a personal experience of mine, I was taught to like work your inner thighs and squeeze and squeeze. And I used to grab a magic circle and really squeeze it all the time. By the time I went to labor, that was my first, I came and like I couldn't push, like I couldn't like dial it. I was barely able to do that. And I remembered the nurse, I will never forget her. She asked me, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a Pilates instructor. She's like, oh no. That's what she said. She said, oh no. I was like, you squeezed really hard those inner thighs. I was like, yeah, that's what I was told. So I overdid it. Now, I think it's important to find the balance. You can work your inner thighs and you should because you'll need that. But I think it's important to have that feeling of like holding and hugging, but also knowing when to release, especially when you get towards like third trimester leading into labor, because you'll need that. You'll need to know when to hold and when to let go. So I think that's what you mean. I don't think like not to do at all, but maybe just kind of balance that inner thigh work.
Okay, got it. And is there anything specific, especially like preparing for the labor, that you recommend or like see like, okay, it's like once we're moving into that third trimester, any
Yeah.
specific work that's really beneficial for moms to prepare for their delivery?
White
Okay.
squats, like go like sit like wall sits, but turn the legs out a little bit. I
Mhm.
like to bring the big ball, if you have it in the studio, put it against your back on the wall, kind of slide down into like a plie, kind of like you're doing a pelvic lift, right? But the pelvic lift or the reformer is going to be hard because you have to lift your hips up. So it's like a standing pelvic lift and you're lower down. You can hang out there and then come back up and like do those to kind of like really open. I thinking working the breath, that 360 breath to just kind of like knowing when to release. and when to engage are really good. And honestly, working of like moving the body and working stamina, because you will need stamina going through labor, especially first time mom that going through labor and delivery, it usually at minimum of 24 hours. Some are really lucky and it's less, but it's minimum of 24 hours and more. And you need that stamina. So if you're working with a client to like build up stamina, I'm not saying like make her run, but like just kind of like working and moving her and working strength, it's so important so she can build up that when she's going through it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I remember um, when I had my second set of twins, I had a C-section, so I had to have like an anesthesia and all of that done. Um, and one thing that I thought, oh, I'm so happy that I practiced my Pilates breathing because it was so much easier, first of all, to get the shot, like that spinal shot,
Yes.
whoever done it, because, if they miss it, and I've talked to women who did not have a good experience of it. It's not good, but like being able to use that deep breath to really relax, feel your muscles relax, all of that was really helpful, even though, again, on that second one, like didn't have like a natural delivery, but it was still Pilates still contributed to that.
Yeah. I think so too. I think like actually finding the calmness in the breath when even if you're not going through actual delivery and you're going through a C-section, if it was an emergency section, especially let's say, I think if you're feeling so upset, but you're able to tap into that breath, it can really calm the nervous system and like maybe help you have a better recovery from C-section. So
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
breathing is the a big key here.
All right, so we had our baby, right? We
Right.
had our prenatal, like we have the whole pregnancy in 15 minutes, but let's move on to our postpartum. And this is actually like the conversation that we want to focus on, kind of sit a little bit here, because something that we don't talk a lot about.
Right.
So, just to kind of set us up, what do you think are the top three things that teachers generally overlook in those postpartum sessions?
I think the biggest one for me is not realizing that you need to take a moment to pause and take the information of the client and realizing what she went through and not jump right away into the beginner system. Even though beginner system can be really good, it's not the same clients that you get for the first time because this is a client, it's like a special clientele. It's going to be like a client that comes from a surgery, a client that comes from like an injury, those kind of clients that need a little bit more attention to details, and then not just jumping right into like doing like deep flexion work that has a lot in your beginner system. So it's kind of like just a different approach. I think that's one. The second one is I'll go back to breathing. We kind of forget it, but like Joseph Pilates was a big believer of breathing. Like one of the principles there, the principles of Pilates is breathing. And I think sometimes we either overdo it, right, of breathing, or we're not putting any kind of like attention to it. But I think in postpartum, it is what's going to heal like your client. Like it's everything. It's gonna calm your nervous system, especially as a new mom. It's also gonna heal the diastasis recti you have. It's gonna get you kind of like more deep and connected into those deep layers of the abdominals. So I think kind of like really focusing on teaching breathing is important.
Okay.
And then yes, and then
So that was two, right?
that was two, right?
Yeah.
That was two. And I think let's see, the third one that I'm thinking of that can be kind of like really important to kind of like focus on is like not to like I think I meshed it up with the other one, right? Not to like do too much of a deep like abdominal like a flexion, right? And kind of like
Mhm.
make sure that they're like more like working more deeper into their abs before you kind of like curling them up and lifting them up into it. So I think that's also kind of like an important one to put like to figure out like not to rush into it too much.
Yeah, got it. All right, so let's move on. So you talked about not rushing into the flexion, and I know, I mean, for me, I'm speaking from personal experience, just not being able to do that flexion was one of my biggest things like this kind of moments, like, what do you mean I can't sit up? And, obviously all of our
Right,
abdomen looks kind of still pregnant after we deliver.
right, right,
And all the women, they just want to get back to feeling like themselves back there. So that's where Pilates is usually associated with strong
right.
core strengthening. What are the techniques that you recommend for these postpartum clients to start working on their core strength again?
Right. So I think one of my biggest thing is to try to really find those like deep transfer abdominals connection. So if we're thinking about any time that you are curling the head up, right? You're putting too much pressure on the rectus abdominals, and then you're not so much deep into those layers. So one of the things that I always say is like keep the head down and try to work first with the head down so you can really get connected with your breath into those low abs. Um, Another important thing is even though we really want to do a roll up, it's going to be very challenging, but I'm all about like doing flexion, but working the other way, meaning working the negative. So now let's try to do the roll down versus the roll up and really try to find that C curve in the right place versus kind of like be in it, if that makes sense. Kind of like find
Mhm.
it as you roll down from it versus trying to like sit there and try to find the work in it. So working from negative can be very, very helpful. And it can become like slowing down to like feet under the strap. Let's hold under the knees first. Take the time there. Then to slowly make it like even more harder by like taking the hands off and then slowly maybe using more of like a bar to like create more tension and then more tension until we're actually able to do a roll up without jumping and skipping through.
Mhm.
So I think that is a really good one. Um, I think another one for like working like more your work your deep core is to actually flip things around. So if you're going against gravity versus staying with the gravity, it makes your abs working differently. So for instance, a lot of people always like, oh my God, can I do a plank again? Even though I'm still doing a plank with prenatal, but I guess that's prenatal something else, but doing the opposite, like turning around and coming, for instance, on all fours and trying to find the work there and resisting gravity, it makes like the feel of like, oh, I have to pull away from gravity because if not, the back is going to start kicking in because there is no support. So then it kind of makes the client have to work. So working against gravity sometimes can be very helpful for clients.
Got it. So, what are some of the fundamental alignment principles do you think that need to be incorporated in that postpartum work? The body has changed, obviously. A lot of times there's a lot of their breastfeeding, the delivery, all of that. The alignment is, in most cases, not the same as when they
Right.
before pregnancy and during pregnancy because that changed. And like at this point, like they don't even know where their alignment is.
Right, right. So I think one of the things that you'll see a lot in pregnancy is that extra rotated, right? A little waddling towards the end of the pregnancy. And then that big lordotic curve in your lumbar spine. And when after, like after you have the baby, what happens sometimes it either stay as it is or women try to recorrect it and you'll see a little knocked knees. Lock knees are big ones that women do. They kind of push into it to like find their strength from the wrong places, but you'll see that happens a lot. If they are not in lordotic curve anymore, they kind of sway their back, right? So they kind of hunch back, especially if you're breastfeeding or feeding a
Mhm.
bottle, it doesn't matter. Like you're kind of sitting back and then your shoulders around forward as the breast is getting bigger after pregnancy. So there is a lot of that kind of like kyphotic, like that you see the neck might moving forward. So there is a lot of like alignment situation happening there. So I think one of the things that I really love to work with women for alignment wise, especially a lower body, is all of a sudden kind of like bring them into more of a parallel position and doing exercise that are more parallel to maintain the alignment from the hip, the knee, and the ankle, and working from kind of like the down up and the other way around, just to kind of like try to really reactivate those muscles in the back of the body, in the side of the body, all those muscles that kind of got a little weak during pregnancy.
Okay. So I'm gonna follow up with a question, one of the questions that came in. um kind of plays into the alignment a little bit. How to approach outer glute tightness and lower back stiffness postpartum? Because lower back pain is kind of probably the primary concern throughout pregnancy and after. It's like almost
Right.
a given for majority. Somebody
Correct.
they will experience it some, yeah. So how
Yes.
would you address that?
So I think for the low back, it's always comes to like deep in the core work, find the transfer abdominals, do those exercises that like really activating your deep abdominal connection so you can support the low back. And that's kind of like when I'm teaching in the teacher training, I call that the reactivate your core exercises. Those are like a pre-Pilates exercises that like actually like really working to like fire those muscles, kind of wake them up because they were numb for a little bit. And then that's what's going to help you get stronger and connected more so you can do all those Pilates exercises that we love to do. Well, not really love, right? 100 and your abdominal series and
Hmm.
all that, but you'll be able to get back to them without feeling too much of a pain because we want to build up to be able to put more load without feeling the pressure in the back. For the hip tightness, that is very common because after you carry for like 9 months, it's just gonna put so much pressure down. So kind of like finding that like more working in the parallel will help to relieve the tension. And definitely like you start to do a little bit more of a stretch, kind of like opening up. I always think about the Eve lunge on the reformer is one that I really enjoy doing to kind of like open up because the front splits, I would say, like coming back to it, it's going to be a little harder to get to, but like I think that's a nice ease in to come into it and really open up. All the bell stretches and kind of like the side ones can be really nice to open. It's going to be challenging for them, that's for sure. But it's going to start to kind of like just building up some opening of those hips. So just kind of
Hmm.
like something. So it's like building the strength, but in the same time also finding the stretch into it. So it has to be a balance between the two.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so next one, and I think that's an interesting question. Um, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions about it. So, as I mentioned earlier, you are a master teacher with Real Pilates. If whoever doesn't know, Real Pilates is a classical Pilates, classical ba based Pilates training program. So obviously you're yeah, as a classical teacher, so the question is like, how classical can you stay while working with both pre and postnatal clients? Can you
Mm.
stay, can you maintain that classical routine and everything that comes with it?
Oh, I love that. It's such a great question. Okay, so to answer, yes. And then let me kind of like elaborate a little bit on that. So I always think about, and this is something that I tell my trainees all the time. You, when you're teaching a classical, like the ideal, right? We always call it the ideal. That's what we want our client to get to. And then we have to like modify it to our clients that cannot do it, right? And the modification can look in a lot of different ways, right? We can kind of like change it up a lot. So much that sometimes the exercise will be just the setup, right? It can be like getting to the setup or taking it to the wall and mimicking that. So I can actually do a lot of like variation on a classical, but I have to ask myself, and I always do that. I ask myself, okay, Keren, is it still look like the classical, or did you went so far away that it's something completely different? And if my answer is no, that makes a lot of sense. It looks a lot like it, but I'm using the wall in order to do that, or I'm using a different apparatus in order to do that, then it makes sense to me. So I feel like you can stay in the classical, maybe not the classical order. I might need to kind of shift the order a little bit. I might need to skip some exercise on the reformer and like take it to the reformer or to sorry, to the Cadillac or to the chair. But if my exercise look and serving the same purpose that I want, it kind of makes sense to me. And then I feel that's how I keep myself classical and not like taking it so far away that I can be okay with that, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, makes
Yeah.
sense. Absolutely. Yeah, so you can like still stay strong and continue with a lot of the same work. You don't have to resort to just pre-Pilates work or something like very basic constantly. You can still continue and keep working through it up
But
to the delivery. Well, I mean, like obviously, like
right.
we're not going to be working advanced, super advanced moves there,
No.
and
Right. Right.
yeah,
I think the pre-Pilates will be in the postpartum.
yeah,
Kind of like that before the 100
hmm
exercises and stuff like that. But all that came from like I think like Kathy Grant had a lot of like before the 100 and a lot of other elders because classical is not only Romana, right? There is a lot of like other elders out there that it's like you can kind of like take in and like and you still feel like we're all there. I think for me, contemporary is when you're like, I don't even know what's the name of the exercise. Like, what is that? Like, why do you do that? Is it safe? Is it like very different of like what it was actually was taught by someone that we know in the lineage, right? So I think
yeah.
that's kind of like when, because I sometimes do use exercise that like Kathy Grant taught, or like a variation of that, or like Eve or like someone else that it's not always just Ramana.
All right, got it. So the next question, let's keep on moving on, and that's I think like one of those biggest questions that every you always get is like, how soon can someone come in for their first postpartum session? Like how soon they can, and I guess like how soon maybe they should or should be encouraged to come in, which can be like two different
Right.
answers for those.
Right. So I think for me, when I accept a client, I need to get the okay from the doctor. I don't feel comfortable working with someone that did not, like the doctor did not sign off of it. So usually doctors sign off for vaginal around 6 weeks and like C-section 8 weeks. I did have clients that like the doctor sign off in like 4 weeks. It was a vaginal client. And I always make sure that like they don't bleed because I think it takes after recovery, especially from vaginal. I can't say about C-section because I never had a C-section, but it takes for vaginal at least around 4 weeks to stop bleeding. Like, like I'm not saying like gushes of blood, but like you still like you're in the beginning of period, and that's when I don't work with a client. I want them to be clear of that before I start talking, like working with them, because I don't want to do anything that is to harm them, and also it takes time for the body to heal. That said, I still think, and I tell that to my client, even though you don't come to see me until the doctor sign off, the one thing you can do is start working your 360 breath. Like start right away. Like you don't need to see anyone for that. You can do that. It really helps to like pull out all that together, relax the nervous system, do light stretches. All that is good. Like and walking, do walking. Like walk, take the baby out, go for a walk.
Yeah. So, like, would you give like a homework to your clients who've been with you during their prenatal period? You would just encourage
Yes.
them, or yeah.
Yes, yeah, and yes, and I check in. I kind of see how they're doing because being a new mom can be very isolating, especially if you're not part of a community. I always tell my clients right away, check the baby groups. I'm telling you, those are saving. Like you can find it in your neighborhood, reach out. Like, don't be alone. Like, make sure you have support. I always ask them, like, what's the plan? Like, do you have a plan? Like, who's gonna be with the baby? Like, are you gonna be alone? A lot of them, like, their partners usually stay for the first 2 weeks, and then like and then it becomes lonely after and like you're in this like I always say it's like in this like bubble of like constantly doing the same thing. So if you find people that are in the same boat as you, it makes it way easier. So I
Hmm.
think it's important to remember the just also kind of like the mental thing that the women goes through.
So, do you think like when working with those postnatal clients, like their hormones are out of whack, to say at
Yes.
least, and their emotions are along, for the ride with their hormones, and then they're not getting any sleep. So, it's easy to say that they're kind of on edge a lot of times.
Oh yeah,
There's a
100%.
lot
There
of,
are.
yeah.
Yes.
So with that in mind, like, do you have any tips on how to work with those postpartum clients to understand, I guess, like what they're going through and how to help them transition to this period as a Pilates instructor, how to be there support for them, understanding what
Right.
they're going through?
I think let them talk. Let them talk. It's their 55 minutes. It's their finally they're on their own. They don't have a baby. They don't have someone watching over them saying, and I actually, it's funny, but I just recently got a new mom on my schedule. I have different moms, but this is like fresh new mom. And one of the things that she told me when she saw me for the first time is like, it's okay if I'll work slow. That's what she said to me. And my understanding was like, when I heard that, I was like, wow, she really just want to talk for a little bit. And as we worked, we also kind of like, I let her talk, and she had so much on her chest that she needed to kind of like let go. And I think I'm not a therapist and I'm not trying to be, I'm not taking anyone's job, but I think sometimes when women comes back, they need to find that they have a friend and they have someone that they can trust, that they can kind of like just kind of like say a few things and then we work, and then we say a few things and then we work, and it makes it feels better. It makes like that she's like in a safer place. So I think listening, but also making sure she's getting some workout. So it's not like, it's not a coffee time, but like it's like the balancing between of like make sure you're there for her for support, but also kind of like, okay, let's do a little bit. And it's okay to kind of slow down when she comes back because it's a lot.
Hmm. That's good advice. So another question came in actually on a completely different side of the same, right? Like not a slow person, but how to deal with women who want to do too much too fast,
Oh yeah. And
which we
actually,
have those as well.
right. I actually feel like those are more and more. Like I have clients that are just kind of like they just it's that feel, that pressure that we have from society to get right back into things, to do everything, to like be that super mom that does like just absolutely everything. And I think that's a lot of pressure that like in the beginning women won't feel it and then they'll like just crash. So I think I try to kind of like explain to them what are we working on and why is important to take a moment and deepen the work. And I tell them also, Pilates, let's work deep. If you want to kind of get your mind off things, start doing some cardio. I think it's really important to balance that cardio. Like Pilates, let's just work for a second, like more details, more alignment, more of that. So you could do the things that you want to do. What if you want to like go back to spinning, go back to like doing strength training, wanting to go back into like, I don't know, hit cardio, like all those things. In order to be able to do all that, you have to work deep because if you'll start like run, do jumping jacks, and then you'll start peeing on yourself,
Hmm.
it's going to be very hard. So I think it has to understand the balance. And I'm honest with my clients, like, do you want to pee on yourself or do you want to like hold it all together? And usually they agree with me.
Yeah, that's one of those things nobody thinks about until they have their first baby.
Right, yes. And then they realize they're like, wow, I really cannot do that jumping jack anymore. But I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, but let's figure out how we can. I remember like I'm actually that type of person. I'm the A-type personality. I pushed myself when I had my second. It was also COVID time. I was stuck at home with my 2-year-old, not even, he was barely two, and a new baby. And I was like, I'm stuck at home. I can't go for walks. I can't do anything that I could done with my first. And now how do I get the workout in? And I remember I was like, okay, I'll just sign up for one of those like uh, classes that you can do online. And I was like trying to just really push myself. And I remember I was like, oh, I'll try some jumping jacks. And I started jumping jack, and I was like, started peeing on myself. I called one of my best friends. She's also a Pilates instructor, crying. I was like, I can't believe I can't do this. What is wrong with me? She's like, slow down, take your time. And I was like, that's what I'm telling all my clients. I should probably take it on my own. So I think like, I guess it takes 3 times for a charm to like actually kick in. But I was like, okay, I realized that I was like, I'm also that type of person. I get it. I get that we want to get everything. You want to do it all. But sometimes it's a good reminder to kind of say, take your time. Remember that it took 9 months to bring that baby to the world. It's going to take at least 9 months to recover from it, if not longer.
Yeah, if not longer, yeah, for sure. So you mentioned the obviously the pelvic floor, like we started talking, and that was one of the questions that came in, which is again very common one.
Right.
Is do you have any specific advice on how to help women reconnect and strengthen their pelvic floor after delivery? Especially vaginal ones, it can be slightly different, a little better with C-section, but still, even in that case, there's still
Right.
some weakening happening.
Right. So I think pelvic floor it's pretty weak for both because through your pregnancy there is a lot of weight, a load
Hmm.
down. So any woman going through pregnancy usually will have some weakness in her pelvic. The thing with the C-section, they might come in and like just tighten things up. So it might be a little less, but it doesn't mean we don't need to work on it. Again, I'm gonna go back to the breathing, and I said like the 360 breath, realizing how to release and hold in is what really going to help those muscles to like reactivate and really work it. And as you build up that feeling and the corset feeling of the TVA, it will help to like really gain more strength in your pelvic floor. You want to avoid putting too much pressure too soon. I think that is one of the biggest thing is like don't overdo it in the beginning because if you're going to load the abdominals too much, that load pushes down into the pelvic floor, and with a weak pelvic floor and too much of a load when you're not ready, it's going to weaken it even more than actually heal it. So I think actually working the breath, building up that deep abdominal connection, then slowly building the load will help really connect all the pieces together and create a little stronger pelvic floor.
Yeah, I remember um, when we were talking about like that load, one of the images that I forgot where I saw, and it really helps for me to talk to my clients, like, hey, think about it. It's like a toothpaste tube, right?
Yes,
When you start doing those flexion and all of that, you have like your toothpaste open and you squeeze, and what happens to the toothpaste? And like all
right,
goes out. Like if it's nothing there, if you can't do it correctly, not working from the right place, and
right,
that tends to kind of connect with them. It's like, oh, yeah, like maybe I should not be because this is exactly what I'm
right,
doing. It's like, okay, I see the visual of where it's going.
right. It's like
Um,
that pushing the pressure down too soon versus like slowly taking the paste out versus like just kind of
yeah,
pushing it all
yeah,
the way. Yeah,
yeah. So do you have the moms usually like young like new moms, they a lot of times they won't feel a lot, especially in their whole like abdomen area, pelvic floor, all of that. They just don't feel it. There's no, yeah,
right.
connection. So to strengthen, do you have any like cues that you like to use with your clients to help them connect that breathing to their pelvic floor connection that you could share, maybe like some visual or just, yeah, any
Right.
cues that work?
Right. So I think for me, it's that corset. I always talk about that corset feeling of like a wrapping thing around. Sometimes I need them to like, it's still kind of hard to understand. So I either take like, if I have a towel or just like a jacket and we kind of cross it over to just kind of like trying to like really understand that. For me, one of the things that really help with the breathing is talking about like kind of an accordion when you breathe in and then out and like open and close, that feeling of like really open and close. One of the people that I really like to follow, she's a PT, Dr. Sarah Duval. She has this like a really awesome video showing like an umbrella opening and closing, the idea of an umbrella, and you want the umbrella to be like open evenly versus for the breathing, right? Versus like kind of broken in a few sides. So like really finding that expansion, so kind of like focusing that breath and then that wrap of that feeling of like a corset. And then that kind of like the idea of like closing and like holding in. So you can talk a little bit of Kegels. I try not to overdo it with the Kegels because I feel like when you do it too much, because I don't know if the client has a tight pelvic floor or a weak pelvic floor, because you can have a tight and have the same symptoms as a weak. Then if you over prescribe Kegels, you can make it tighter versus we like and then like not stronger. So I'm not a big fan of like talking about too much, but sometimes I kind of like the idea of like it's like an elevator and you go up
Mhm.
the elevator to the first floor, to the second floor, all the way up and kind of like let it go and release. So that feeling of like really kind of like trying to build from the inside all the way up. So that feeling of like zipping up. One of my biggest one is like new moms, we all know that it's like that feeling you want to get back into your jeans and you're trying to zip it and you just can't. So you have to kind of like lift it up. You have to kind of pull you up. You can't
Mm.
just suck it in. It's not going to work if you suck it in. You have to kind of lift and then kind of like zip it in. So it's that feeling. And every time I say the jeans, everyone all of a sudden kind of like they know exactly what I mean because we all try those jeans. So it's like that's why I always like that. And then sometimes I ask her, so the jeans went like, did you able to put the jeans on? And some of them, yes. Actually, after like 3 or 4 months, they're like, oh my God, they're in. So I feel like the jeans thing always helps.
Yeah, that's a good one. So, we have a couple more questions, um, and they're going to be more specific with like different complications, maybe that can be after or different types of delivery. But before we go and touch on those, I want to ask you a little bit about the program, like your teacher training program, Mama Like Me. Could you share with us exactly what it is? Is it like in person? Is it online? How can somebody learn if they want to kind of go deeper into the work and be more comfortable of working with the postnatal and prenatal clients?
Right. So my training is 10 hours, is over 2 days that we do. It's in person. I sometimes I do it at Real Pilates or at Intrabeca, or I do it, being host in different studios in New York, some of them in different places, depends. So if you're a host studio and you want to like a studio somewhere around and you want to host Mama Like Me, you can do that too. People can also join virtually and it will be on the same time zone. Some of them are like in different times. I had people from like Hong Kong and Singapore, and they join in. It was nighttime for them, but they did it. You can definitely do that. So those are like definitely 2 days. The first day we do 5 hours of prenatal, and we kind of cover a little bit of anatomy, just kind of like talking about more the pelvic area, and then we there is like I would say it takes me probably around 2 hours to talk about like all the scenarios of like each trimester and how to work and modify things that you should do and should not do, how to do things in different times and like different clients. Because I always say we have two different prenatal. Is that prenatal first time came in, she's in your, I don't know, second trimester, and she wants to try something new. And then your client have been with you forever and like got pregnant. So we talk about those scenarios and then we go through the whole system. I like to go through the beginner system and then I usually add some stuff from intermediate because I think that's the biggest chunk of like people do and normal people. Of course, I always give time for like, what if I have a really advanced client? What do we do then? So we leave some time for that. And then we talk about how to structure an actual session for your prenatal client. Talk a little bit about group classes, if because I had some students that like we teach group classes. That's not always a thing, but it's an option. So we give some time for that as well. And in the same format, we do it on the next day, and it's only postnatal. Over there, I add the reactivate your core. It's like 14 exercises that are kind of like a pre-Pilates exercises that are specifically for postnatal. I have some specific like fire up exercises that like will work really well for your C-section clients versus your vaginal. So it's something we also talk about, like vaginal birth versus C-section, the difference, how to approach it. Diastasis recti, because I feel like very sexy subject that we need to cover, and kind of like how to check for it and how to work with it. And then kind of like pressure management, that's something we talk about as well. So that's all that in the actual in-person virtual. And then after that, they have a written and a practical test. And then they can get a certification from me and from the National Pilates Certification Program. It's like they get 10 CECs. So if you're part of it, it's a nice big chunk of CECs. So that's a good option for that. And then I also have an online platform that it's for people that like are just kind of like wants to get information, want to become part of like a community. So I have like a subscription that like you can do either monthly or yearly. And those ones are like kind of like becoming part of like, it's really great for my graduates. I have some graduate there that like just wants to stay in the game. And it's kind of like a reminder. So it's like I call it the living manual subscription, because I feel like there's always more things to add, always more new information and like things that we can like just tweak a little bit and talk. And then we meet once a month for like kind of like a mastermind Zoom session, so we can talk about things. We can bring scenarios, and just kind of stay together. And I think always my goal is like, let's find support kind of like for our women as they go through like prenatal and postnatal. Because postnatal, even though we say it's like people think it's like 6 to 8 weeks, it really goes year and beyond, because a mom can come back to you after like 5 years trying to like refill her low abs. And I think that is important to like be like, yes, let's work on it. And it usually works. It's amazing. Like I will see someone for like that been a mom for like 5 years, and then like all of a sudden she's like, I never felt my low abs and I feel them now. And that makes me such a success. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, I think it's very common, like not for them not being able to feel their like lower abdominals. It's like 5, 10 years, like they don't even know. But I really like the idea of your online living manual, because I feel like with a lot of the training slits that I've been through, like you go, you learn all this information, you think like, okay, I'm prepared for it, and you get your first client, and it's something like completely throws you off. It's like, I don't remember that, or that was not, or like, how's that? So that
Right.
way they can come in, it's like, okay, here's the situation, and what do we do with it?
Right. I think so too. I think like we all get that. And then like you become a teacher, you have you have the ideas, but if it's like a muscle, right? You have to constantly like work it, you have to talk about it. And also like you'll get different scenarios. It will be like I had one of my graduated reach out to me with like this, like she was like, oh my God, my client came back and she had like a surgery, like a repair surgery for the diastasis. They put a mesh in. What do I do with it? What's like the situation? And I was like saying the same thing. It's like, you know what? Like it's all good, but it's like you put a band-aid on, right? It might feel strong, but she still needs to work those muscles to reconnect that. So all those like reactivate your core still gonna work. But it was nice because she was like reaching out, and it was like still staying in the community of like we need one another. And I think that's something as Pilates instructors, we always need one another. We need to like from one another. We need to continue learning. We need to being in the game and like remembering that like you're always a student. You're always a student. That's one of the things that my teacher used to say all the time, Bob Lickens. Was always I remember saying as to us, like always remember to be a student of the method. Always. Never like you're gonna be a teacher, you're gonna be a master, you're gonna be a lead, whatever you're gonna be. But you have to remember where you came from, because it's really important, because that keeps the passion and that keeps you kind of like wants to keep moving forward. Um, and I learn as much from my trainees as they learn from me. That's why I always say it's like, oh my God, those questions were amazing. Make me think. So I like that.
That's true. Yeah. And if you guys are interested to find out about the next live or in-person training, or about the Mama Like Me Living Manual, it's really easy. Just go to Karen's website. It's mamalikeme.com. And you can also, yeah, like very simple.
Very
Um,
simple.
and you can also, if you're interested to kind of learn a little bit more from Keren, you can download her just free guide for 5 things that new teachers do wrong with pre and postnatal clients. So you might find something there that we haven't covered today during this interview. It's I've read it. I think it's great. Just really useful information. But we do have a few more minutes, and I think I have like the juiciest questions for the last 5 minutes. So we'll see if we can
Okay, I'm
get them
ready.
in. All right. All right. So one, and maybe it's a large one over there. We can kind of condense it a little bit. What is the difference of working with a natural vaginal birth versus C-section? When somebody's coming, obviously they're going to come in at different times. Um, like for you as a teacher trainer, what do you think is the biggest difference in addressing those two clients?
So I think when a vaginal client comes in, she can feel her abs when she's doing our ab work, but they're so weak. And she can feel it. So she will fatigue sooner. Versus a C-section that can do stuff, but she will say, I'm not sure where I'm feeling it. I'm numb. I hear that a lot. So I can see the connection, but she won't be able to feel it. And I always say to that C-section clients that sometimes we have to do repetitive of movement to kind of like find, and then all of a sudden, like it will like it's not going to happen on the same session. Sometimes they'll just kind of need to go through until that muscle starts to activate. And then they'll be like, oh my God, I feel it. So I think that is the biggest thing that I see, the numbness of C-section versus like the weakness and fatigue of like your vaginal birth.
Okay. So this would be something that you address. Other than that, I guess like the rest of this session is gonna stay pretty much the same because it's still
Yeah,
recovering in a similar way.
correct. I think I will have like in my reactivate your core, I have specific exercise that I found that like can be very helpful for C-section versus your vaginal birth. That like just kind of like they're able to like connect to it a little bit sooner. Like it's kind of like all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I feel it. But yeah, and that will be specific for them. Like I'll be like, okay, let's try that. Like I kind of like usually I notice it that it's just works a little bit better from them.
Got it. Okay. So now everybody knows where to find that exercise
Yes.
in your training program. And the other question that also you mentioned a little bit is the diastasis recti. Again, it's kind of one of those topics that's, I feel like it always comes up in the postpartum
Right.
category, I guess I would say. So what are some of and there are like so many don'ts and do's and don'ts and everything around it. It's a huge conversation on its own.
Correct.
Um, what what are some of the most important things to address to help those clients, right? So they have that abdomen domain, they can't connect most likely. Um, so when you're working with those clients, how should you structure the session to help them?
Right. So I think with diastasis recti, one of the things that we need to remember is I'll go back and I'll kind of like keep saying it, is the breathing, is work on that 360 breath, that core set feeling. And then the second thing is pressure management, meaning like how much load and I'm putting on my client to be able to make her feel the connection. So in the beginning, it will be definitely less of a load. And as they get stronger, you want to start to like add the load because if you're not going to add the load, that's when you get to plateau. So you want to avoid that by slowly adding the pressure and the load for the client and then being able to find that connection because it's a muscle that needs to like work to pull in together to soften but also to strengthen in the same time so that like connective tissue that linea alba becomes strong again because right now it's kind of like weak and and thin and we want to bring it back to be like bouncy and strong and healthy and that's kind of like what we want to find is like putting the right amount of pressure and the right time and
Okay.
that's how you structure your session.
So would you avoid any type of like flexion exercises for those
Yeah,
clients?
so in the beginning, for instance, if we're thinking about like the 100 with their handles and pumping legs out, that is tons of loaded flexion. I will
Mhm.
definitely avoid that. I'm not saying I'm not going to do the 100. I'm just going to do it more modified with less load, and then I'll start building up the load to it.
Oh, like just to kind of make it practical for somebody, if we're talking about the 100 and you have a diastasis client in front of you, how would you modify it? Obviously, no sprains and all of that. Would you still do it on the mat or reformer, or would you take it in a different position at this point?
So I can do a few things. Depends how far they're in the postpartum journey. I can do it against the wall. I can take it on the mat, right, with nothing, head down. or head up when they're ready. Maybe the knees are a little bit more bent in or reaching up to the ceiling, depends where they are. When they're ready for some more, I might take them to the reformer and then I'll drop down to 2 springs. And then I'll work there and see how they're handling the extra load and then maybe start to add on. So definitely like less of a load, less of a spring, then start to put more and more. And when I said bend the knees in, I do not say tabletop. Please know that. Sorry, I have to note that. I'm not a big fan of the tabletop because that puts a lot of pressure on those tight hip flexors that already exist. Just draw the knees into the chest. It doesn't have to make a shape. Alrighty.
I know. I think like sometimes in Pilates we like our pretty shapes and like
I
specific
know we
way
love our
like
shapes. Sometimes it
yeah,
doesn't need
like
to be pretty. It's okay. It's okay. Don't make a shape.
all right. Well, I think we covered a lot. I mean, I can imagine like it's the hour is already up, but thank you so
Oh,
much,
wow.
Karen. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
thank you.
Um,
That was really
thank you for
fun.
I enjoyed having you and talking about all of this like postpartum work. Again, it's if anyone is interested in learning from Karen, make sure to connect with her through her website, um, on her Instagram. You can connect. What's your handle on Instagram?
Mama.like me. Yeah,
Here we go.
great.
Nice and simple. Yeah. So make sure to connect with her on Instagram so you can DM her if you guys have any questions specifically about her training or the program. And go to her website at mamalikeme.com to find out more about her program and what she does. Well, thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you. Thank